Hey there everybody, we are back with another profile for you all today. This one is inspired by the old Ophaniloop build. I had a lot of fun playing the deck back in the day when it was somewhat viable. I just think unfortunately right now it just doesn't really stand up to what this meta is all about. I just don't think it really can keep up with what the big hitters want to do. But I really wanted to bring the deck back. I try to make a few changes to keep it somewhat relevant to today's meta. So let me know what you guys think. The official deck photo will be linked in the video description down below. If you like what we've been churning out for you guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We really appreciate the support we've been getting quite recently with how the channel has grown. So thank you all. And without further ado, let's get into it. So start off with the eggs. We're going to be running 4 of the BT3 Upamon. Basically inheritable to let you draw one if you have 3 or fewer security. Not a bad inheritable effect. I think for yellow there aren't really great egg options for what this deck wants to do, but I think Upa is probably the best one. Another one that you can consider running is like Cupimon, but I do like Upa because more often than not 3 or fewer is probably easier to attain than 6 or more. We are running a 5th egg simply because the deck is pretty much a grindy deck. So you will at times want a 5th egg, and that 5th egg is going to be Venusmon. We do run a few options in this deck, and I think, Vixie can come into play if you do happen to draw into it. So not a bad 5th egg. Moving on to our rookies, we are going to be running 4 of the BT13 Kudamon. Kudamon on play effect is to search the top 3 cards of your deck. You can add 1 yellow card with Vaccine in trait and 1 yellow tamer. So you'll be hitting a lot of your Digimon with this because most of your Digimon, except maybe a couple, are all vaccines, which is something that I feel like the Ophani build of old was sort of lacking, was searchers and consistency pieces. And I think Kudamon does help a little bit with that. The inheritable doesn't really come up that often. If there's 6 or fewer security cards, you can neg 2k. Not as, not as important or not as relevant, I think, for this deck. But I think as a searcher, I think it's pretty good. So I think it's a very good consistency piece for this deck. Next rookie we're running is 4 of the BT2 Salamon. Salamon is pretty good in the sense that if you have 3 or fewer security cards on deletion, you can recover 1. The whole point of this deck is to recover, to stall, and to really build a board until you can go for lethal. So Salamon just helps with that. You are able to just give yourself another lifeline if you're running a little bit low on security. So a lot of times I'll just have Sala in raising and just wait, right? And kind of build up my board otherwise. And then when I'm, a little bit of a pinch, I can bring out Sala, swing, hope it dies. If it does die, then I recover 1, right? So I just think it's very good for that recovery mechanic. That rounds out our rookies. Moving on to our level 4s, we're going to be running 2 of Devimon from BT11. This card's pretty good, I think, because it has Rush Retail if you have a yellow Digimon or yellow Tamer in play during your turn. So can be pretty good in the mid-late game scenario. If you're able to bring back a Devimon and have it have Rush Retail, that's another swing you can get in with it. I also think that if you kind of bring it out of raising, it can act as a pseudo removal threat, because if you have Retail and your opponent's big guy is stuck suspended, well, you can just swing into it with Retaliation and get rid of it, right? So I think it's a very flexible card and a very useful card. So I run it at a 2 of because we're running 2 of the Black Gatomon from BT8. Black Gato, again, has Rush inherently, and then its inheritable gives the stack Retaliation, which is not bad. I think giving your stacks Retaliation with your top end can be quite annoying for your opponent because your top end has ways to have your field have blocker. So having a blocker stack with Retaliation can be very annoying for your opponent to just have to play around. And then I think this having Rush late game can be huge, right? You can bring it back and just rush. and that can sometimes be a swing for game too with a black Gatomon. So I think again a very flexible card. If you're looking more into like Ultimate Cup format, you could consider doing 4. I don't love 4 of Black Gatos strictly because it's a 3 to Digivolve. So it is an expensive Digivolution play because more often than not you'll be passing turn going into it. But I do like running at least 8 level 4s in this deck just for consistency's sake, because the last level 4 we're running is 4 of the starter deck Gatomon. On play, you get to cycle top 3. By looking at top 3, you can pick up 1 yellow, 1 purple Digimon. And during your turn, if you're to Digivolve this card into an Angel, Fallen Angel, or Archangel, you reduce that Digivolution cost to 1. So it helps you turbo into your top end as quickly as possible, which is what you want to do, and helps give this deck a little bit of tempo. This is the MVP of your deck, hands down. But like I said, sometimes your deck doesn't really burr until you can get a Gato play going. So you really want other level 4s to maybe flex into or go into in the back just to help build your stack up if you don't see your Gatomon. So I just feel like, that's why I run 8, is because you want to be able to find alternative ways to build up your stack if Gato isn't found. Because you really don't want to be like, well, I don't see Gatomon, my gameplay's done, right? So you want to give yourself other ways to get into your stack. So I think 8 level 4s is sufficient for that. Next, we're going to be running 3 starter deck Angelomon. This card, I think, is very good for its on-play effect, which is to neg 2 security check to one of your opponent's Digimon. Helps you, again, stall and, delay their game plan a little bit more. Paired up with, spoiler alert, one of your top ends with Venusmon, giving that security modifier can also be very annoying for them. Its Inheritable is also just really good for this deck. Gives it more tempo. If you have a purple Digimon in play, this stack gets +1 security check, which can be helpful if you're going into, say, for example, Ophani, right? And swing for 2 checks and kind of get that out of the way. So I think you run this at a 3 of, and then you run 3 of the BT11 Angelomon. She's good because I think you can cycle your security, take a look at it, pick up your piece, and keep going. You run enough Angels and Fallen Angels, etc. in this deck where most of the times you will probably hit at least 1. So I feel like this helps with consistency. It also helps just cycle out your security, right? And put maybe like another option or something in there, which can be very annoying for your opponent. So you really just, I think, gain a lot of value with this card. Particularly if you're digivolving strictly for 1, right? It's a 1 to pick up a consistency piece, put something else in security. The Inheritable is also very good during your opponent's turn. If you have a purple Digimon in play, all of your Angels, Fallen Angels, and Archangels gain blocker, which can be very annoying in the late game. I think this Angelomon is something you want to go into early game, and then this is a late game Angelomon. Mainly because after you've done your pokes, what you want to be able to do is build sort of like a wall of Angels, right? And this allows you to do that. If you can get, your Ophani or your level, your purple cards out there, your Angels all get blocker, which is very annoying for your opponent. Sometimes they're dealing with 3 or 4 blockers on play, which, late game can be cumbersome. We're going to round out the level 5s with Angelomon X Antibody. This is a very good card because when Digivolving, you can neg 1 security check onto one of your opponent's Digimon. Again, pairs very well with Venusmon. Also just helps you stall out for your sort of combo plays. If there's an Angelomon or X Antibody in the stack, you get to recover 1 as well. So helps, again, with the recovery stall mechanic of this deck. I think you have to run it at a 4 of because you have plenty of Angelomon targets to shoot for. So more often than not, you will be able to make the decision to recover or not. I think late game, you do have to be a little bit cautious with your recovery plays because you run the risk of decking yourself out if you're too gung-ho with the recover and you get lost in the sauce with all of it. So sometimes you do have to be a little bit careful with how you play this card. But I think early, mid-game, like this is still a very, very good card because, for example, right, like if you have a Gatomon ready to go, you go into Angelomon, for 1. Then you can go into Venusmon X for free. You can neg check on something, recover 1, and then potentially recover again with your Ophani. Because when digivolving with Ophani, if you have a yellow card, you recover 1. If you have purple in source with your Gato, you can pop a opponent's level 4 or lower. So essentially, you're able to recover 2 in 1 turn, which can be very helpful. To note, though, with Venusmon X is you can only recover if you have 5 or fewer. So there have been times where sometimes you do get lost in the sauce and you recover too much, and then the recovery doesn't proc. So be careful with that. But in the late game, like, this card can really just give you another lifeline because you're able to turbo up into your top end, you recover 1, you neg check 1. It just does a lot of work. So I think, again, I like it because BT11 gave Ophaniloop a little bit more targets with the new Venusmon. Next, level 6 we're running are 3 of what I think is probably one of Yellow's best top ends in Venusmon. Venusmon, when digivolving, it's a 4 to digi, but when digivolving, you give your opponent a blanket -1 security check to all of their Digimon. So it's not just the ones that are on board. If they raise, then they get check -1. If they go from like a hybrid onto a tamer, that's a check -1. So really slows down their game plan. During your opponent's turn, if there is a security modifier on that Digimon, whether it's an inheritable, whether it's something that's given to them, like for example with Venusmon X, whatever, they can't proc when digivolving and they can't proc when attacking effects, and they can't swing at Venus. So really just stifling card, a really, really big, just mega floodgate in my opinion. If I could run her at 4, I most definitely would. It's just deck space is very, very tight with this deck. So I feel like Venus at a 3 of is just, I think, ideal. Because you really want to see her towards the late game and just stall your opponent out, get your board set up, and then kind of go for game that way. The last top end we're running is 2 of Shine Greymon Ruin Mode. A really good purple-yellow card, very, very annoying when digivolving effect, and on deletion. So both are the same, but when digivolving, you give a blanket -5k DP to your opponent's board. So very similar to Venus, if they're in raising and they promote, they gain that -5k blanket. They hybrid, -5k blanket. They bring out a tamer, like a Marcus becomes a Digimon. That also gets a 5k blanket. So this is just a very good stall effect. End of attack, so it has to survive that attack, but end of attack, if it does survive, you delete the Digimon, and then you can recover 1 from your deck, and then your on deletion will proc, which is you give that -5k blanket again. So just very, very good for what this deck wants to do, install and really drag your games out. The recovery is also very nice. So I think this is a great top end for this deck. You typically will want to go into this late game. I think going into it too early, just really, you don't get a lot of value off of it. But I think late game, Ruin Mode has such great, great value for this deck. Tamers, we're running 2 Kari from BT8. It's a memory setter. Also gains you a memory every time you add a card to your security stack during your turn. So for example, right, like, you have your Kari out, you have Gato, you go into Venusmon, you go into Venusmon X to recover. So essentially you can do that, tap Kari to make all of that free, go into Ophani for essentially now, like, basically a 3 cost since you made your Venusmon play cheap, and you could in theory recover 2 during that turn and minimize that play cost efficiency. Kari also will proc if you are, say, searching with Venusmon. Say you digivolve into Venusmon, you search, you remove something, and then you recover. So you pick up a piece and recover. You can tap Kari to suspend and gain that memory back. So essentially making this play for free. So pretty good in terms of its flexibility. I think it's, again, you're recovering so much with this deck that more often than not, this will be able to proc. Lastly, we're going to be running 3 Mimi from BT3. Mimi, I think, is just a really good tamer for any deck that runs a decent amount of options. You make your option plays a lot more efficient and a lot more cost effective. It's a 2 cost to play, so it's a very cheap tamer to play, particularly early game. Like if you have no really other play to make, you just throw down a Mimi for 2 and you don't really give your opponent a whole lot to work with. All turns when a player plays an option card, you can suspend Mimi to gain a memory. So for your side, you can make your options cost a little less and make your plays more efficient. On your opponent's turn, you can really make their plays a lot less efficient, right? Like if they play a boost, that boost can become a lot more expensive. They play an ice wall, that ice wall is expensive. They play a hammer spark, well, that hammer spark basically did nothing. So I think Mimi's just a very good just control-y card, and it also additively gives your deck a purple source. I considered running Mirai from BT11 as like a yellow-purple source. I just felt it was way too expensive to like play. It's a 5 cost. Yes, you do gain the memory start a turn, but like it really doesn't do a whole lot. Your Andromons don't really synergize with it, so I just felt like it didn't really give a whole lot of benefit to the deck, which is why I didn't run Mirai. So that's why I think Mimi is also very important, because this gives you an additional purple source outside of your Digimon. To round out our tamers, we're going to be running 2 TK. I think TK is just the standard yellow tamer at this point. I don't think you're going to get a tamer that's better than TK. It's a memory setter. You get to look through security, pick up any yellow card. Doesn't have to be a Digimon. It could be an option, whatever. As long as it's yellow, TK will let you pick it up, which is just really good, right? I mean, this is basically what yellow wants to do. I don't think you're going to, like I said, I don't think you're going to get a better tamer than TK for your yellow decks. So that rounds out our tamers. We're running 1 reinforcing memory boost. Again, I think it's just a really good card to, again, give yourself another lifeline. You get to search top 2, potentially put an option card on top, and then take 1 piece to hand, whatever it may be. Delay to gain 3 memory is also pretty good to help extend your plays, particularly if you're having to slam down a Gato. Like, this can become a lot more efficient and a lot more effective. So I think it just is very helpful for the deck. Options, we're going to be running 2 Odin's Breath. Odin's Breath, I think, pairs very nicely with Venus, If you have a Venus in the late game and you just throw down an Odin's Breath, your opponent's plays can get very, very messed up and very slowed down that way. So I think Odin's is a good late game card, particularly also because you're covering a whole lot, so the less than 6 security total typically won't proc until the very end. So usually I will wait. If I have Odin's in hand, I will wait until the very late game to play it, just because it really, like I said, it just really just slows down what your opponent wants to do. I think you don't run it any more than a 2 of. I think more than 2 just gets really clunky, but I think 2 Odins is a good sweet spot for this deck. We're going to be running 3 Flame Hell Scythe. Good option to just bring your pieces back. You neg 6k DP to opponent's Digimon, and then you can bring back, as you can see, pretty much all of these pieces that are 6k or less. You have a lot of targets with this deck. Not a lot of on-play effects outside of these guys, so I think you try to prioritize these. But what you can do sometimes, right, is that if you have a stack with this inheritable, and you can proc the blocker effect, sometimes you can Hell Scythe to bring back an Andromon or a Devimon, and you give yourself another blocker, right? You can bring back Gato for more search. You can bring back Black Gato and keep turn. If you can keep turn with your Mimis, you can bring back a Black Gato to just swing for game. There's so many things you can do with Flame Hell Scythe in this deck that, I think it's a very valuable resource. There's a lot of different plays you can do with it. Chaos Degrade is our next option. I think it's just the best removal card in the game, hands down. I think Lonky is up there, but I like Chaos more just because it's just purely you're just getting rid of their cards, right? It's just hey, get out of here. You take their card, you can put it to top or bottom, and then trash top. It does get by a lot of your protections right now. So X antibody protections, you can get by with Chaos Degrade. Chaos doesn't care about it. I think Machine is probably one of the major decks that can counter Chaos Degrade, but even then, I think Chaos is just so strong. Of note, the security is a Yume. So do note that sometimes, like at the late game, if you hit a Chaos and security, you don't want to recover your opponent one. You can say, you know what, I'm not proccing Chaos. I'm not going to use it. So do keep that in mind. Sometimes you get so autopiloted into saying, well, Chaos, yeah, put it on top. You don't have to do that if it's checked in security. So do remember that. But otherwise, I think, like I said, it's just hands down the best removal card in the game. You have to play it. Last option we're running is Calling from Darkness. You delete one of your Digimon, then you return up to 2 purple Digimon cards from your trash to your hand. Good for recurring your Ophanimons, basically, or your other purple cards. Do note that this isn't your typical purple deck, so a lot of your purple targets aren't really here. So one thing that I have caught myself doing and, have to remind myself at times is that if I'm proccing Calling from on Ophani, I have to proc Calling in its entirety. So, for example, if I have my Ophanimon stack, I check, it lives, now I play my Calling from Darkness to pop it, I have to resolve Calling from Darkness the whole way, meaning that I have to delete and then pick up 2, and then I can proc Ophani's effect to play a level 4 or lower. So sometimes I've caught myself being like, oh yeah, like I'll play Calling, I'll pop Ophani, I'll pick up, I'll play out Gato and then pick up something. No. I have to pick up 2 first. So sometimes you can find yourself in a pickle and like, well, shoot, like I've only got 2 purple Digimon in trash to pick up, and then now I can't play anything. So you do have to be a little bit careful with when you're playing Calling from Darkness. You have to make sure that you have that additional, additional pieces to pick up, and then that additional card to play. So you have to be very, very careful with that. You also have to remember that Calling won't let you pick up the Ophani that you popped, because Ophani technically is still in purgatory and you can't pick it up with the effect. So the sequencing does have to be a bit nuanced, and you do have to be a little bit careful with how you proc Calling's effect. So just do keep that in mind. But otherwise, that is the deck. Let me know what you guys think. Like I said, I've had a lot of fun playtesting this deck and trying to make this work. This is the best build that I have so far. I think there are some changes that you could potentially make if you want to run this for Ultimate Cup and maybe take out your purple sources and put in some more yellow sources. But overall, like I said, just have a huge blast playing this deck. Let me know what you guys think. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.